Vanakkam. Greetings. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope 2024 is a year where you will be increasingly happy and make happiness around you. My pen name is Self Sir. I recently published a book called VEL WAY. Be happy, make happy. I have been using YouTube as a way of highlighting aspects of my book. This is session 4. Let's recap what we covered in session 1, 2 and 3. In session 1, I gave an introduction to what is happiness in my view, and what does the words Om and VEL, the first two words of the title, means. Om meaning we are an evolving awareness. VEL is the three tendencies, how we evolve. The power to be aware, power to evolve, and power to love. In the second session, we discuss the third word of the title, the way. And we looked at the fourfold paths of self-actualization. In the third session, we looked at few techniques which helps practice our understanding. All the complex and nuanced concepts are useless unless you can bring a state of mind and a way to approach life at the point of action. So that's one of the techniques used there is visualization. So the focus for today, which is session 4, has two major topics. One, give a gist of what is self-actualization really is. So we talked about self-actualization. Now it's time to describe them in terms of 8 qualities that one embraces as part of self-actualization. The second part of the session is to give an overview of the table of contents of the book. What else have I covered in the book as a highlight of the whole book, the structure of the book. Before we jump into the 8 qualities, I want to recognize that my book is structured around an ancient book called Tirukkural. It is widely known in India, and also it's been translated in many other languages. It was written more than 2000 years ago. I have given it my own interpretation of Tirukkural. Tirukkural has a unique position in the world of self-actualization or any life framework. It doesn't belong to any religion, and it covers the full spectrum of life. The first part is the quintessence or spiritual quintessence of way of life. The second part is how do we apply that to character building or our inner life. Third part is how do we apply that for external use, the skills or competence. The last part, give it an experiential emphasis in this life. The first section, the spiritual quintessence, have 4 parts. The first part is called celebrating the divine self. In Tamil, the word for God is kadavul, kadandu ulnikra. That means that which transcend and also act from within. In my interpretation, that is our ultimate self. So Tirukkural is chiseled to precision. There are 1330 couplets. Each couplet has 7 words. So the first section has 10 couplets, and that's how my book is organized. And I'll go through each one, which provides a skeletal structure of the book as well as the spirit of each chapter. Let's now look at the summary of the 10 couplets which provide the structure of my book. The first 2 I've used as an overview of the book. We have already discussed the sink or swim. The second one is about mindful life versus mechanical life. So if we look at the very first one, sink or swim, the verses goes, at least my interpretation of those who unite with the ultimate swim across the vast sea of life, others sink. So the ultimate here is the ultimate self. So the swim is the path of self-actualization. Sink is the path of clinging or self-preservation. This we covered at length in session 1 and 2. So I'm not going to spend too much time in session 3. The second couplet is about mindful versus mechanical life. We can lead life in two ways. One, we can run our life out of memory, habit, laws, rules, everything of the past, or everything driven by some external rules. That's comparable to leading a life of planets or machines. It's a mechanical life. The second part, the mindful life, requires an active engagement, using each opportunity as an opportunity to discover yourself, a little bit more about your higher nature. Reflect that and evolve with this. Each experience is used as a stepping stone for evolution, so that the next moment is engaged by even a slightly more evolved being. And mindful living or self-actualization requires embracing and evolving 8 qualities. Let's look at each one in turn and how that links to the book I have written. The first quality is I am an awareness. The Om, the first word of my title. Om is the ultimate self. The world we experience arises from who we are. So this is the first assertion. And we have discussed this a little bit more in the first session. There are 4 states of awareness: physical, physiological, psychological, intuitive or meditative awareness, A, U, M, and Om is the holistic and a sacred awareness. So first is an assertion saying my ultimate self is this awareness, a holistic sacred awareness. I'm not the body or its possessions or faculties. I'm not the mind or its faculties or its experience, but I am an awareness of these. I experience these and evolve from those. That's the first assertion. Second, our life is not defined by what happens to us. It is defined by how we perceive that, how we process it, and how do we engage. Then how do we reflect from there, and how do we evolve from there. We talked about the Buddhist notion of dependent arising, where the chain of events leads to one, and the starting point is either ignorance or awareness. So that's the first assertion. The second quality is that I am an evolving process. I am not a fixed product defined in terms of body, mind, its faculties, its experience, or its acquisition. I am an evolving process. I experience through the body-mind. I acquire through the body-mind. I have faculties of the body-mind, but I am not none of those. I am awareness which is evolving. Now, this is captured in the second word of my title. How do we evolve? With 3 tendencies or powers. 1, power to be aware. Power to evolve based on what we are aware, and power to love, which is the fuel which gives inspiration or motivation to be aware, as well as inspiration or motivation to evolve. So these 3 together is part of the second one, which says the purpose of all learning is to embrace the good path of the wholesome awareness. Everything we learn, we experience, is a stepping stone to be more aware, and then follow this path of VEL to be aware, to evolve, and to love. That is the second quality. Third quality is to recognize that I am the way. I think it's Jesus Christ who actually said, I am the way, and people reach the Father through me. That is a state of mind to say, I am an awareness and evolving awareness, but my way is represent who I am. So the way to self-actualization is actually cultivating who you are. And if I look at these words, it says, that which transcends the manifest and unite with the ultimate leads a heavenly life on earth. So how do you transcend the manifest? You can't just run away. You have to actually fully digest every opportunities you have. That's the only way you can transcend it. What that means is be open, fully engage, reflect, evolve, and then move beyond the immediate. And then unite with the ultimate, meaning move towards your highest self, which is the self-actualization process. Leads a heavenly life on earth. I'm going to cover this a little bit more when I go through the chapters, but that, you hear all religions talk about living a heavenly life on earth. In Christianity, it's the kingdom of heaven is amongst you. In Buddhism, it's called Sukhavati, meaning a pure land where you can live. In Hinduism, it's called Sivapuram. It is a notion that you can live happily in this very world like a heavenly being living on earth. So going back to the third one, the way is to transcend, meaning go beyond the immediate, evolve towards the ultimate, and lead a happy life, progressively a happier life. The next 5 qualities represents the fourfold path. So the first, I'm going to use 4 and 5 together. The 4 is about not clinging to outcomes. The 5 is about not clinging to deeds. What does all of this means? In Bhagavad Gita, there are 2 major ideas: karma phala tyaga, karma sannyasa. So Krishna advised in Bhagavad Gita to his beloved disciple, if you want to progress along self-actualization, first don't cling to the outcomes. You can use them as a target. You can actually succeed, but once an outcome has arisen, don't cling to that and define yourself in terms of that outcome. It is an outcome as a result of what you did, but the outcomes don't define who you are. So that's the 4th quality. 5th quality, deeds also arise from you. Your expressions are an indication of your state of mind at a particular point in time, whether that's words, thoughts, or deeds. So don't hold on to, cling to them and say, this is me. So going beyond the deeds and say, these are deeds that arose from me, but I am not those deeds. I can evolve beyond those deeds. So if I look at the 4th one goes beyond suffering by moving past the duality of craving and resentment of outcomes. So you neither crave nor you resent the outcomes. It is what it is. It has a purpose. But once the outcome has come, you have to move on. Don't cling to those. The 5th quality is those who serve to glorify the ultimate, unite with it, transcend the darkness-filled dualities of the action. The actions and outcomes have dualities, good or bad, but they are relative truth, meaning relative to who you are. At a given point in time, something is good or bad based on who you are. They are not permanent or ultimate truth. And therefore you don't need to run away from that. You recognize that deeds are good or bad. You recognize. But based on who you are. As you evolve, your definition of good and bad changes. And your definition of good deed or good outcome changes. So if you cling to an action or an outcome and define, this is who I am that achiever, or I got that outcome, then you stay behind. That's a self-preservation mode, or as we call the way of sinking. But you'll experience from that, evolve from that, and then move beyond that is the way of evolution. So these are way of service. We discussed this at a bit more detail, saying it's an outside-in approach where you start with actions and outcomes, engagement with the world, use that experience and the reflection from there to evolve beyond that. The next quality, the quality 6, is about way of worship, meaning you start from inside and then evolve that and take that to the point of action. So leave the sensual experience with the senses and to lead a heavenly life but adhering to discipline of truth. So we experience these. That's exciting, sometimes painful, but park them, leave them at the senses. Then evolve your psychological awareness based on a notion of your ultimate self. Your emotional faculties, your intellectual faculties, evolve them based on what is your ultimate self. Now take that evolved self to the world and engage from that point of view and experience those. So this is an inside-out process, as we discussed a bit more detail in the previous session. But the quality here is to follow the discipline of truth, but leave the bodily experience, physical, physiological, where they belong. The next quality is what we call as the meditative awareness, or the way of witnessing. To transcend the mental suffering is to identify with the essence of the ultimate, which is beyond the description in terms of body-mind experience. So the first one is an outside-in process, which is the quality 4 and 5. The quality 6 is an inside-out process. The first start with physical, physiological expressions and spiritualize them. Second, start with the psychological awareness and spiritualize from them. Third, you have evolved, saying these are lower faculties. I want to engage from an intuitive awareness perspective, which we discussed before. So here you are a witness. So witness has no definition or boundaries in terms of body-mind, because it is witnessing both. Hence those qualities, saying you are beyond the you are not defined in terms of body-mind experience. The 8th quality is the way of unity. It is the culmination of all of the others. Unless one is in union with that which is a synthesis of verity and love, one cannot swim across the worldly seas. So after being a witness, after evolving your physical, physiological, psychological, as well as your intuitive capacity or faculties of awareness, the final attribute is to engage each moment as a wholesome, sacred awareness. You are one with the ultimate at each point of engagement, to the extent you can. At the point of expression, you and the ultimate are not two different things. The essence of the ultimate, it's called Sat in Hinduism, or it's actually, all religions have this dual definition of the ultimate. One is the truth or verity, authentic. The other one is the love. Authentic really means you are not fettered by the 3 fetters we discussed. You don't cling to the outcomes and deeds. Second, you don't cling to a relative truth or a notion about what world is, your body-mind experience. Third, you don't define yourself as I am this, the atomization. When you get rid of, or when you go beyond this fetish, you lead a life of truth, an authentic life. What is love? In Yoga Sutra and Buddhism, it's defined as Brahma Vihara. The 4 elements defined what love is. Not the romantic, clinging love, or the third need in the hierarchy of need. That's a deficiency need. That's more of I love you because you make me happy. That's not the love I'm talking here. This is a state of mind, an intrinsic element of who you are. 4 elements is, 1 is a positive outlook, a benevolence. You wish everyone well. Second is a sympathetic joy. When someone does well, you're happy for them. Third is compassion. When someone goes through unhappiness, you're not necessarily unhappy, but you're compassionate towards that person. The 4th element is called equanimity. That is, I am not disturbed or clinging to the other person. Love is freedom. Clinging is not love. So these 4 define what love is. So coming back to the last quality is, unless one is in union, that which is a synthesis of verity and love, authentic and love in the way I have defined, one cannot swim across the worldly seas. So this takes us back to sink or swim. So these are the 8 qualities. So first is I am an awareness. Second is I am an evolving process. Third one is I am the way. Fourth one and fifth together is the way of service. That while I experience but not defined by the outcomes and deeds. Fifth one, the body and mind construction of the world doesn't, I don't cling to that. I evolve from that experience. The 7th one is I am a witness. I evolve by understanding and reflecting my experience. Last one is I evolve towards my highest self, which is defined in terms of verity and love. So these are the 8 qualities, and I have structured my book around this. But obviously, this is not a research work. I defined this book thread by thread based on my experience over the last 25 years. So I am given it the meaning that makes sense to me without violating the words of those couplets and the spirit of that book. So now let's go to the next topic, looking at the table of contents and the structure of this book with a view to give everyone a sense of what this book is about. We have so far covered various aspects of the book. I want to put the whole structure so that people have a sense of what it is. Let's talk about the first 2 chapters of this book. The first chapter is personal search and research. So as I mentioned, I've gone through various stages triggered by an existential crisis in my late 20s. Over the 25 years, I've described what I went through to arrive at the findings of this book, and which include some of the research, some of the training, and other things I've gone through. Second chapter gives an introduction to this book. To some extent, it has been covered in section 1 and 2 particularly. So what is VEL WAY means as a spiritual seal, as an outlook of life and a way of life. And what does be happy, make happy, in the sense, what does happiness means? What are its measures and what are the type of happiness? So I go into those in chapter 2. Then I actually number the remaining chapters. The first 2 are overview and introductions. The first chapter, which is marked as chapter 1, is Self Actualization Epic. I have taken a story from Hindu epic called Kanda Purana. It is one of the best stories that describes the process of self-actualization. Stories are a very useful way to understand a concept, because pure theoretical discussions alone doesn't really help crystallize those thoughts. Parables are used in every religion and every philosophy. So I have also used this story to explain a journey of a soul towards self-actualization, and it is one of the critical epic in Hinduism. The next chapter is Key Takeaways and Visualization. So this takes the story in chapter 1, then give it a visual aid. I think we did discuss this in section 3, the dance of bliss, and I've used that and few other visuals to represent these ideas first as a story, then as a visual representation, so you can almost grasp what they are before getting into details. The chapter 3, it's titled Sink or Swim Across the Vast Sea of Life. We have discussed this in the videos session 1, 2, and to some extent 3. But I go into more details about the hierarchy of needs, the sheets of experience, what does sink means, what does swim means. And I'm introducing one of the key masterpieces of Hinduism called Sivajnana Bodham. It has 12 verses which describes the way of self-actualization. It is a highly revered piece of text in Saiva Siddhantam, the southern flavor of Hinduism. And then I also introduce the concept of dependent arising, which is, I've already talked about, a Buddhist construct. Then I'm going to take a pause away from spirituality and some other concepts. I'm going to take a slightly different path towards multiple perspectives on self-actualization. That includes a biological view at a cellular level. This includes some of the experiments done by a German biologist called Driesch. Then I talk about neurological and a psychological view. I think I mentioned Kurt Goldstein. He wrote a book called Organism, and he describes, in fact he was the first one to coin the term in the scientific community, the word self-actualization. So I've summarized my understanding from that book. Then a psychoanalytic view, individuation and process of becoming an integrated being. This is my extracts from various readings of an eminent psychologist, Carl Jung. I did share some of those ideas in session 3, but I go a little bit more details into this. Then we talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. His view of 3-stage metamorphosis. I discussed this in session 3. The 3 stages being the camel, the beast of burden, the lion, the rebellion, and the child, which is the sacred yes. Then I do talk a little bit more about humanistic and psychological view from Carl Rogers, from his really nice publication called Fully Functioning Person. Finally, I do talk about a spiritual view and a philosophical view from Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish a spiritualist and a philosopher. From his book Sickness Unto Death is one of the best books on self-actualization and spirituality. So I've included all of these just so that it gives a multiple perspectives. So I don't want this book to be an academic or a religious or a siloed faculty book. It is a holistic book looking at some of the ancient wisdom augmented with this psychological and philosophical view of modern times. The next one is chapter 5, which contrasts and compares mindful versus mechanical living. Mindful living, as we discussed before, is to be aware, to take the path of self-actualization. Mechanical living is to live out of memory and habit and determined by external rules. Here I go into details and introduce the 8 qualities in the book, and obviously I have discussed this in the previous topic. I also introduce a core phrase, an important phrase called Chat Sit Ananda. Sat Sit Ananda. Sat is the essence. Sit is the realization of the essence. Anandam is bliss. So self-actualization is bliss. And I go into detail about what is the essence and what is the actualization and what is bliss. Some of these we have discussed at a high level, but I go a little bit more deeper in my book. From this point onwards, I have taken some key topics and gone into a bit of a deeper level, so people can really understand at a more granular level rather than a high level notion. Chapter 6 is titled I Am an Awareness. It is one of the qualities. Here I start with the story, a Hindu story very popularly known, but I am using this to explain what an I Am awareness really means. It is where two of the god of creation and the god of sustenance or protection compete with each other, and they settle to find the top and the toe of Shiva, and then try to establish and what happens there. But I'm obviously using this to explain the topic. Then we go into each state of awareness. I've used extensively from different sources. Tirumandaram, give it a bit more description of what each state is and how they come together. In addition, I've also used the reverse cycle of dependent arising. Previously we talked about how ignorance has a domino effect. In this, how the awareness has a positive domino effect towards happiness. That's an important Buddhist notion. So that's also part of this chapter. Chapter 7 is I Am an Evolving Process. So I start with the story of Bhagirath. It's a well-known story in India and amongst Hindus, where a king tried to bring in a sky river Ganga to earth. I'm using that as a story to explain the topic. Then I go into details of importance of self-discovery in self-actualization. As we discussed before, in the path of sink or swim, when in the path of sinking, you take a fixed position of who you are and you try to force fit life into this. In the path of self-actualization, you actually are open and engage life and discover who you are in that experience. So every experience becomes a little bit more informed and aware of who you are. And the final goal is actually moving towards your higher self. So there is an important practice amongst Hindus. In Tamil it's called Verity. In Sanskrit it's called yagna. It is a ritual, but behind that ritual is a very important concept of self-discovery. I have given it my interpretation of that practice. The next chapter is I Am the Way. As we discussed, Jesus said, I am the way, and way to my Father is through me. Similar statements has been made in other religions as well. So I start off by explaining what a Chin Mutra means. It's an important hand gesture where the pointing finger merges with the thumb and the other three are left. In essence, these are the three fetters, and this is your ultimate self and this is your evolving self. So how the evolving self, leave the fetters behind and join the ultimate self as the way. Here again, as I mentioned before, I go into details of heavenly life on earth, the kingdom of heaven as spoken in Christianity, Sukhavati as defined in Buddhism, Sivapuram as defined in Hinduism, and the common elements of those. I also go and describe two critical phrases from Hinduism. One is called Om Tat Sat. The other one is called Satyam Shivam Sundaram. These are not used as academic efforts. These phrases are important aids to take a very complex notion to the point of action, as we discussed. Again, my idea of writing this book is to help a practitioner, not just an academic researcher. So these phrases, visualization, and the couplets from Tirukkural, they're all important aids to, first you have to understand using the prose. You have to read the book. Then you have to bring it to few phrases, few visualization. So when you act, you can invoke a state of mind and an outlook. Because you can't live based on 100-page book. You got to distill it to few phrases and few visuals. This is why this book is full of those. And I have also used songs as a way to describe a particular outlook. Anyway, so this is important aspect of my book, with the view that practicing this understanding is also an important element. Chapter 9 is fourfold path towards self-actualization. We discussed this in various sessions. The way of service, way of worship, way of witnessing, and way of unity. But I go into quite a little bit of detail in this chapter for each one. What is the state of awareness, and what are the qualities relevant to these, the fourfold paths? Also, give a relationship model to each of those paths, like fathers of a child, parent, child, and those kind of things. So it gives a crisper view, a more of a tangible view of what these are, not just as a notion, but something people can practice. The conclusion, or the last chapter, take all of these ideas and start first as a journey of the soul along the self-actualization. I have taken this from a source called Siva Puranam, where one of the saints talk about how they started their life and then eventually enter Sivapuram, which is the Hindu way of saying heaven on earth. The second one, which we discussed in the last session, that's a twilight dance of Shiva. That is Shiva's dance, representing or capturing various awarenesses in Om. The physiological awareness, the psychological awareness, the witnessing, and finally the wholesome. So it is called the twilight dance, and again I discussed a bit more in the previous session. The last part is song and dance of self-actualization. It is a song that representing the VEL, the verity, the evolution and love in a song. So the conclusion is really all the prose, all the visualization, and all the some of the key couplets or the pithy phrases are brought together as a spiritual journey of a soul. And with that, the book is concluded. I hope this session creates interest in some of you to evolve and explore a little bit more. And again, one of the purpose of my book is, if someone out there is able to evolve a bit more and is a bit more happier in their life and able to contribute happiness around them, that would be one of the main objective of publishing this book. I hope you enjoyed all the session. This concludes the fourth part of this series. And with that, this series is over. A quick recap. I have recently published a book called VWL WAY. It has received very positive initial feedback, which I call the baby ripples in the marketplace. And the book has been selected as one of the 8 books to be bookmarked for the to be read. It has also received 5-star ratings from 2 organizations. In the book to bookmark, Publishers Newswire call this a powerful and insightful perspective on human journey, a thought-provoking masterpiece. Reader's View call this book is a perfect choice for finding happiness for yourself, can be a beacon of enlightenment on your journey. Reader's Favorite calls it, I genuinely enjoyed everything about VWL WAY. The level of motivation in this book is sure to help anyone find their path to happiness, fulfillment, and success. A wonderful addition to anyone's self-help library. I hope this has created some interest in some of you and make use of the book I have published. Looking forward to hearing from you. This is the 4th part of the series. It concludes this series. Giving a flavor of what this book is. And good luck to all of you, and wishing you all a happy new year, and be happy and make happy. Vanakkam. Greetings.